Today's Lunch and Learn webinar addresses an ongoing topic for economic development organizations, marketing. The uncertain economic and physical environment has led to new consideration about budget restraints and possible cuts. That means renewed efforts to make the most of the resources we commit to the core of our mission. I'm Kevin Lackey from Brunswick Business and Industry Development. I'm also Senior Co-Chair of NCEDA's Emerging Executives Program, and it's my duty today to welcome everyone to the last in a three-part webinar series on marketing and communications. In a moment, I will introduce our panelists. First, let's take a moment to thank some very special organizations and companies. NCEDA's annual sponsors. Have a look at the names and the logos now crossing your screens. These committed supporters of economic development in North Carolina stand with NCEDA year-round. We greatly appreciate their vital role in making events like this one possible. In his seminal 1963 book, Confessions of an Advertising Man, David Ogilvy, the legendary founder of Madison Avenue agency Ogilvy and Mather, echoed the conundrum business people have long complained about. Half the money I spend on advertising is wasted, Ogilvy wrote. But the trouble is, I don't know what half. Even before COVID-19, few economic development organizations could afford to waste half their marketing budgets. As trustees of these resources, our government and private partners invest in us. We're bound to make the most of every dollar that supports our mission. Today's webinar explores the latest ideas and avenues for maximizing your marketing investment. Our two presenters are no strangers to NCEDA or North Carolina economic development. Jeff Denny is a principal at Liaison Design Group in Raleigh, which provides graphic design and digital marketing solutions to businesses and organizations. Jeff joined Liaison in 2007 after 9 years of economic development work in the Greater Raleigh Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Asheville Chamber of Commerce. He earned a BS in geography from Appalachian State University with a concentration in geographic information systems. He holds the Certified Economic Developer designation from the International Economic Development Council. Albert Eckel is co-founder and partner of Eckel & Vaughn, a strategic communications agency based in Raleigh. He has more than 20 years of communications, PR, and marketing experience, helping clients with corporate reputation, brand positioning, executive visibility, and issues management. Albert's rich expertise, multidimensional perspective, and creative storytelling all drive great value to his clients' bottom lines. He holds a BA in history from Elon University and is a graduate of the Executive Development Institute at UNC's Kenan Flagler Business School. We're grateful to both of our guests for giving up a share of their workday to be with us. And now I'll turn it over to Jeff and Albert.
Great. Thanks so much. This is Jeff Denny. Really excited to be here this afternoon with everyone. Let me start my video. Thanks for having us so much. Really do appreciate that, Kevin and NCEDA team, and thank you to the sponsors who are making this happen. I'm going to just real quickly introduce myself, a little bit of history with NCEDA, and then ask Albert to do the same, and maybe even talk about sort of the goals and our concept of today's presentation. So again, I'm Jeff Denny, have been with Liaison Design Group now for, 13 or 14 years. I'll have to check LinkedIn to figure that one out. It'll tell me at some point. But I've been involved with NCEDA, really, if you can believe it, since I was, I bet 2 or 3 years old, when my dad used to take me to annual meetings down at Atlantic Beach. I'd go out surfing and then go to the shrimp boils at night. But really, from my professional experience, I've been a member for more than 20 years. It's one of the organizations that I will always be a member of. It's near and dear to my heart, and economic development is near and dear to my heart. So I'm excited to be here with you today and look forward to having this conversation. And I'll turn it over to my partner in crime for the day, Albert Eckel.
You're still muted, Albert.
Thank you. And thanks, Jeff. I don't think I've been around NCEDA as long as you have, but I've been around for quite a while as well. Again, my name is Albert Eckel, and I own part owner of Eckel & Vaughn. We're a strategic communications agency based in Raleigh. We do work all throughout North Carolina and the Southeast. And very simply, we help brands and organizations create communication solutions to help achieve their and advance their business goals. And we use communications strategies to actually help do all of that. As Jeff said, we really want to have a conversation with you today. As you know, Jeff is steeped in economic development and sees it through multiple lenses as an economic developer himself in his past, as well as all of the work that he and his organization at Liaison Design Group do now. And myself, I've spent a lot of time around economic developers, but almost in a little bit of a different way. For 14 years, I served as Director of Corporate Affairs for Corning Incorporated. And within this state of North Carolina, during that time, I've been participated in about $4 billion worth of new economic development investments within North Carolina, quite frankly, throughout the state. And I still do work with Corning Incorporated as a contractor, handling economic development and community-oriented issues. So I work and interact with a lot of economic developers throughout North Carolina, especially given the fact that we have facilities from Corning within 7 communities of North Carolina. So today is a conversation. We want to present to you some ideas that we have of how you and your organizations can work in this type of environment. And quite frankly, pre or post-COVID and during COVID, we understand that all of you organizations have to be very vigilant on how you spend your dollars. So quite frankly, we're always marketing in an era of tight budgets in this world from what we see. We want y'all to engage with us and please see this as more of a conversation rather than a presentation. So with that, Jeff, if it's okay with you, I was going to just sort of shoot a question to you. So one of the things I thought was really interesting when we were preparing for this presentation today, you mentioned that you've worked with more than 50 economic development groups. Help us understand what you've done for them, and then really what is your counsel that you're providing to them in light of how they're always beginning to sort of be thoughtful about how they're utilizing their marketing dollars.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's really shocking to go back and think about 50 plus, and that was now at least a couple of years ago that we hit that 50. It's crazy, but we've worked with absolutely teeny tiny towns, population 500, to regional economic development groups, statewide economic development groups, private sector organizations, some of the allies, including Duke, Electricities, some great folks that all of these attendees would recognize. And we help them really in a wide range of ways. One thing that I failed to mention is when I was in economic development, primarily with the Raleigh Chamber of Commerce, I was responsible for the marketing of Wake County economic development and really specifically the life science promotion, and was working, realized actually there was a void. A lot of high-end agencies want every ounce of your business and every ounce of your ad spend, and if you can't, terribly interested in working with you. But with economic development organizations, especially smaller organizations or those on a finite budget, sometimes you just need a little bit of project work. And so we really focus on how can we help you today? If we are not well positioned to help an organization, then we'll let them know. We'll offer resources that we've developed over the last 15 years to point them in the right direction. But we do everything from creating an industry park flyer, even rebuilding a site map a master plan that was done almost in pencil. We can make that a vector graphic so it's nice, attractive, and professional for when you present it. All the way through, of course, we do websites. We also do long-term campaigns, and I think that's really when it's the most fun, is when we get to engage with folks over a long period of time. Great example of that is we've been working with Moore County for, gosh, I bet 7 or 8 years now on an initiative they call More Alive. And if you haven't heard about that, it's really pretty cool. It's a talent attraction, kind of like Wake County's Work in the Triangle. There's some other talent attraction initiatives out there. But More Alive came to us and said, you know, we've got a real problem. We've got a lot of older people that bought homes here during the very first US Open back, that was probably '99. They're moving on in one way or another, and we don't have people to fill those homes. So how can we tell the story that we're really much more than an agricultural community? We're really more than just a golf community. So what can we do? And we collaborated. As a matter of fact, this is kind of crazy. We partnered with Howard Rocket, and anybody in the ad agency or the ad industry in North Carolina is going to know this. I think North Carolina Communications Hall of Famer, to come up with the idea of More Alive. And ever since, so I'll get to my point. We've been working with them basically on a monthly basis to drive traffic to the More Alive website. And we do that in a lot of different ways. But every month we look at the analytics. We talk about how many visits. We talk about who's new. We talk about bounce rates. We talk about what content are people going to. Are they going to the content that we want them to go to? And really over time, we were heavy engaged on the front end, but we built a system that let them take that over. And it's just Pat and Melanie in the Moore County Partners in Progress. And so we built a system that let them continue the efforts. And now I think, I bet you they're spending, if they're spending $5,000 a year on this, if they're spending $2,500 a year on it, out of pocket costs, not internal staff resources, I'd be surprised. And they're getting 60 to 70,000 quality visits to their website a year. I realize that's not Procter & Gamble traffic, but it's legit when you think about those visitors are looking at our message, and that's the message we're telling them.
So what you're really doing is helping these economic developers utilize Google Analytics, utilize other digital strategies to help create awareness to them and their organization. And I would assume, if you talk just a second about some of the metrics that you're using. You just talked about bounce rate and you know, engagement, et cetera. But how are you working with them to make sure that you're looking at the metrics along the way, and as you know, reacting to it, because the plans don't stay in a vacuum always.
That's right. Thank you. And it is the analytics of it are. It's funny. They can seem overwhelming, but they're really quite simple. Google Analytics is a program for everyone. And if you're not using it, your site's currently using it, I guarantee it, but get to understand it. That's really one of the key takeaways. And we'll have a slide at the very end that has some key takeaways. One of them is understand and utilize Google Analytics. It's free, it's ridiculously powerful. And with Moore County, what we did is basically from the very first day, we began creating very simple reports. And we looked at 15 metrics, basically. Number of visitors, new visitors, top content, bounce rate. And for those that don't know, bounce rate is if I come to a page and immediately leave, I have bounced. If I come to a page and visit another page on your website, then I am not a bounce. So your goal is to get your bounce rate lower. That means you're engaging people more with the content. There are some times where bounce rates are fine. If I want somebody to go to a landing page and take action, then a bounce rate is what you would expect. But then we also, the way that we built the traffic to More Alive was almost entirely through Facebook. we tried Twitter, we tried LinkedIn, but Facebook, for some reason, with this audience, I mean, it clicked. And all of a sudden, next thing you knew, we had 30,000 followers on Facebook. It's just been an enormous source of traffic for us. And Facebook is probably the best when it comes to targeting from demographics, likes, socioeconomics, and it's cheap to do. I would give serious consideration to all the social media platforms. Facebook is really more social. It's really more sort of sharing, engaging. LinkedIn, obviously, more on the professional side. There is a time and a place for all of them, and I think it depends on what your message is as to which platform you should engage. And I would also say, don't feel like you need to be on all of them. Choose one, own it, do it well, let it work for you, and then move on. So thank you.
What about, I'll just ask one more follow-up on that, because we've seen a lot of our clients utilize LinkedIn as well. Are you utilizing LinkedIn and helping your clients find solutions through that platform as well?
Yeah, we are, and LinkedIn is an outstanding solution as well. That really is much more for the business user. The nice thing about LinkedIn is, they also make it just about as easy as possible for you, and because they already know everybody about everything about the respondent. So if I create an ad in LinkedIn, and my goal is to have everybody take a survey or just collect information about people that might be interested about my offering, about my industrial park, about my community. LinkedIn makes it so easy because you can just use one of their forms and it's pre-populated. I mean, when it comes to marketing and getting people to share information, every time you ask for just a little bit more is their next opportunity to say, okay, I'm gonna pull back, I'm gonna stop. With LinkedIn, if they click learn more, then basically it says, I'm Jeff Denny, this is my company, this is my email address. All I have to do is click submit. I don't have to type all that stuff in. So LinkedIn is also an outstanding tool. Now, so that I don't take over, and I want to ask you a slightly different question, but I'd love to hear how you guys are using LinkedIn to help your clients out.
Yeah, and let me just back up a little bit because we are utilizing LinkedIn and Facebook and all other platforms, but one of the things that we're really focused on with our clients is making sure we understand and they understand what it is they're trying to achieve. We find in all clients, especially in the economic development world, individuals and organizations that are just going out to actually go do something, but there's not a real driving goal behind it, nor are they putting real driving metrics to actually make sure that we're understanding if we're achieving that goal. So before we're even getting to a social platform, what we're really trying to help someone understand is, first off, what is the goal you're trying to achieve? Because we start every question that way and every relationship that way. And then helping that client develop that plan and helping he or she understand what their audience is, develop that story, and then obviously develop the creative assets to go tell that story through which channel it is. LinkedIn, to your question, is a great place for thought pieces. It's a wonderful place for helping to highlight your workforce development. It's a wonderful place to help highlight your culture within your community. But at the end of the day, it's all about developing thought pieces and helping those organizations and those communities understand how to go tell their story. So again, we start from the very beginning because if folks don't really know who they are or who their audience is, and then are spending a lot of time internally and externally trying to actually cultivate and then tell those stories, then they're not going to get anywhere because, as you know, they're just beginning to flail around. So for us, I think the value that we're always trying to provide to everyone at the very beginning which is a lot of times when, you know, an organization like yours becomes a partner with us in these engagements, is helping that client really know what they're trying to achieve, and then help them develop that plan, and then giving them the metrics and the timeline to then go execute against it. It sounds strange, but I would imagine, and I'd wonder for all of you on the phone and those other economic development officials, I would ask you, do you have a communications plan in place right now? And if you do, when's the last time you looked at it? And then if you have looked at it, when's the last time you've actually made adjustments to it based on current market conditions or other things happening within your environment? To us, the communications plan becomes the DNA and the roadmap of where we're going to go. And we're always working with it. It's easy to throw it to the side and just do what feels right. For us, we think, you know, in an era of tight budgets or an era of unlimited budgets, quite frankly, you know, having that roadmap and then adhering to it is really the value proposition that we provide, and the value proposition that creates success for clients of which we work with.
Thank you for sort of backing up a bit. I dove into the weeds by asking you about LinkedIn. I do want to ask you a couple quick more questions. One, I'm curious to get your take on what does a communications plan entail? You know, I think of a marketing plan. That's really where I start. I'd love to get a sense of what does, at a high level, what does a communications plan entail? And then I think really tying it back to this group is maybe how are you helping economic development organizations either build and or execute on their communications plans?
So at a high level, it's probably not terribly different than a marketing plan, of which we develop a lot of as well. But you know, goals, objectives, target audience identification and segmentation, understanding what messages are going to resonate within each audience class, having an overarching message that speaks to and ladders back to the goals and objectives of which you're trying to achieve. And then all the other key things like timeline, tactics, budgets, and then obviously metrics for success. Going to your question about how we help organizations and what we've done to help organizations, I think several years ago when we utilized the Wells Fargo golf tournament in New Hanover County, working with New Hanover, Brunswick, Pender, in Columbus County, and utilizing the tournament to actually help highlight within that region of southeastern North Carolina the importance of the workforce that they have there. Because, you know, one of the things that we wanted to do was develop a plan that helped highlight southeastern North Carolina and the fact that it's not just a retirement community. Not terribly different from probably what you had to do with Moore County.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a lot of ways to do it, but one of the things that we really wanted to highlight was workforce, and quite frankly highlight those organizations within those communities that are already winning, from Fortune 500 companies to privately held companies. And then, you know, quite frankly, using a model of which we use, which is PESO, paid, earned, shared, and owned, to actually achieve those goals. Paid, obviously, is you're paying. Earned is where we're going out and, you know, quite frankly, pitching writers to help tell our story for us, and that lives in a variety of different worlds. Shared is really, for us, shared is actually helping develop coalitions and partners internally to help share your story, to actually you know, help push out your messages through their platforms. And then obviously owned would be the platforms of which we would create for our clients. That would be anything from the website to the video to what other creative assets that they've got to go to achieve. That's a very simple model. It's a very simple way to think of it. But again, none of that matters if you don't start with a communications plan if you don't start with an overarching message, and you don't start with a real goal in mind of what it is you're trying to achieve. That effort was a good effort because of the fact that we were able to get a lot of earned media, and we were able to actually get a message out in the market that highlighted that region's success from a business standpoint. Because in our mind, lifestyle from an economic development standpoint, and I can actually just say from my past working for Corning Incorporated, a Fortune 500 company doesn't care about lifestyle as much as they care about what assets do you have in your community. And I know that we're always evolving as a culture, but that Fortune 500 company, for instance, like a Corning, wants to know, are you going to fulfill my workforce needs? Sometimes lifestyle and quality of life becomes what you close with, not always what you lead with. And that was how we were trying to actually tip it on its scales during the Choose Cape Fear campaign, because we were not actually leading with lifestyle. We were leading with workforce and leading with success already happened within those communities, and then closing with lifestyle.
So that PESO model is really neat. It's the first time I've heard the acronym. I'm sure that's just me not being in the world, the same world that you're in every day. The earned and the shared, to me, seem like probably, if I had to say which were the most valuable, those seem like they're probably the most valuable. What do you think about that sort of quick assumption?
They're most valuable in terms of they're cheaper. So I will say that. I think everyone on this phone and all of us would always love to have huge budgets to go spend paid media against, because at the end of the day, that's sometimes an easier, quite frankly, a way to get your message out there, because you can buy so many gross rating points, et cetera, and you begin to get your name out there in a larger way. It costs a lot of money though. Earned media, that's where you've got to be very savvy as an organization, and that's where media relations becomes very important within organizations. I know a lot of economic developers don't like engaging with the media because a lot of the work that they do is confidential, and they're right. However, in our opinion, part of the work that you have to do is not only recruit, but you have to retain. And retention, in our opinion, is just as important as recruitment. And by that, I mean engaging with your local businesses, whether it's large and small, and helping them be part of your story, helping them be part of the message that you're trying to get out to the broader community, that goes back to how you're trying to sell your community. And again, that can come through media relations. That can come to your point about shared. A lot of other non-government organizations that are within all of these communities, of which we have economic developers in, and developing partnerships with those organizations, whether it's your chambers, your Rotary clubs, or other types of NGOs within your community. It's really important to make sure that economic development developers, economic development organizations are looking at that and paying attention to that and building those relationships. And again, I'll speak from just a Corning's perspective, just because I've been in so many communities, and it's pretty appropriate to talk about. I mean, once we go into a community, we're there. But we always belong and we always engage with our economic development officials and our economic development leaders because we know it's the right thing to do. But one of the things that we really rely on them on is what I said earlier, which is retention. And retention to us is understanding where our problems, challenges, and needs are and helping us address them. There are some unbelievable economic developers throughout North Carolina who we at Corning work with, and I've worked with in other occasions, who really get that, Jeff. And by get that means developing relationships with those current industry officials and keeping tabs on them, quite frankly. That's low-hanging fruit for new revenue within your organization. That's low-hanging fruit for developing partners to help tell your story. That's low-hanging fruit to help develop ambassadors to be part of your recruitment efforts, quite frankly. And all those things that I just talked about really don't cost any money, but they're fairly fundamental. But also know that in everyone's day in, day out life, we lose sight of that. That's why I go back to a communications plan, and adhering to that plan and utilizing that plan as a roadmap is so important.
Yeah, and to build on that shared, and we've got a question that I'm going to get to here in a sec, but to build on that shared, I have always thought it's the job of the economic developer to say what a great community it is. It's the job of the economic developer to say, yes, we can fill your workforce needs. Yes, we can fill your training needs. Yes, we can do this. And I put myself in that boat because I wore the hat for so many years. We are built to say, yes, we can. And I think that sometimes it's so expected that it might not have the value that, let's say, a Corning executive speaking to another executive would have. They're tight-knit circles, and the reality of this game is that people sit on boards with other people. They talk, they have conversations. And if somebody's happy in a community and they share that story, that the value of that executive sharing the positive message that the economic developer preaches is so far more valuable and et cetera than the economic developer saying it, that's something that we should all strive to achieve, is have somebody else do our job for us. And you can't do that without that relationship.
North Carolina has, in all 100 counties, wonderful economic developers. And I don't like calling anybody out because I don't want to insinuate I'm leaving someone that's great out. However, Norris Tolson and Edgecombe County and Oppie Jordan are really good at what they do, as are a lot of other individuals. But I'll just call them out individually because Corning put an 800,000 square foot facility in Edgecombe County. It's up and running. The biggest concern around that facility was workforce development because it's a very rural and underserved community. And, putting, key executives in front of, to your point, in front of Corning key executives is what sealed that deal. And, if you don't have those relationships to begin with, to where you can actually utilize those quote unquote key executives, then you can't take advantage of that tactic. Which means that if you're not actually focused on retention and engaging with your current members, and I don't mean engaging by saying, we want you to sponsor this event, or we need you to help us here financially. I mean, sitting down and talking with them and understanding what are their goals and objectives. I've seen a lot of economic development officials do that really well. And in my mind, that's marketing. And in my mind, that doesn't cost a whole lot of money. As they always say, it's about the cost of a cup of coffee.
Right.
Or these days, a video call. So,
yeah. So we did get a question from Evan. Thank you. And I mentioned it, so I'll take the first stab at answering it. But I'd love your feedback too. And the question is, what downsides are there for being active on all social media platforms? And my biggest thing is the time it takes to really engage in all of the different platforms is just too much. Unless you have a social media manager whose position is really just to focus on the social media aspect, then being on all the platforms, and trust me, we all know when you're using Hootsuite because the exact same post goes on Facebook, that goes on Instagram, that goes on Twitter, that goes on LinkedIn. That's not really, in my opinion, using all of the social media platforms to their fullest. And so I think really it's just a capacity thing. And if you can own one, if you can be the person that people want to learn more about or follow or on LinkedIn, then do that first. And if you find that you still have capacity, then move on to the next appropriate one.
Yep. I'll address that real quick, and then I want to go to another question if it's okay with you as well. I'm with you. I mean, the question of what's going to all different platforms, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, honestly, the counsel I'm providing is, what is it you're saying? And in today's environment, where speed kills, quite frankly, we do a lot of work, and our agency does, with crisis communications, and we have sometimes municipalities that we're doing work with, especially in today's environment. Speed is the enemy, because anything that is put out there that is said the wrong way or interpreted the wrong way is a killer. And as an organizations that, you know, quote unquote represent their communities, I don't really care about which platforms you're utilizing. I would probably suggest LinkedIn and Facebook, maybe Instagram. That's about it. With maybe a heavy focus on LinkedIn, in my opinion, but to be debated. Regardless, though, whichever platform, just being very thoughtful about what you're putting out there, and being very thoughtful about how you're engaging with others that are engaging with you. There are some economic development groups that just do not know social, and I'm not sure that's the right thing to do at all. Actually, I know it's not the right thing to do. And the reason they don't do any social is because they don't want to actually get hit in a negative way. And a lot of that is driven out of, quite frankly, fear and of the unknown, and an inability to really develop their message. We believe that these platforms have to be utilized, but to my other point, I think what's really important is not the platform itself, but what's the message you're putting out there, and are you being really strategic and thoughtful about how you're putting that out there? Because we're in an environment that is completely different than we've ever seen before.
Yeah.
Can I take one that came from Sherry Wilborn?
Yeah,
The
perfect.
question is, what are the best ideas for adjusting marketing in light of coronavirus? Site selectors are remote working, yet activity is increasing, or is it too late? Which I would say is absolutely not too late. There's all kinds of opportunities that are out there. Do you want to talk about some ideas, and I'll jump in as well?
Terrific. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you very much. I thought that was a terrific question. Thank you for that, Sherry. So yeah, we all know the days of calling up site selectors, taking them out to lunch, going to meet face-to-face are on hold, probably for quite some time. So what do you do? And I understand there's been some conversations on this platform or on this webinar series around digital road shows and things like that. And I think those make a ton of sense. They're really all about being prepared. People are still taking meetings, but now it's a matter of doing something remotely. So what is it that you're actually going to communicate with these site selectors, and how are you going to do it? I think if you look at some of the models, people are obviously, you can use Zoom, et cetera, but rather than just having a face-to-face like this, why don't you build yourself a virtual roadshow that lets you use PowerPoint or Prezi or any number of different presentation tools to engage with the site selector in an interesting and thoughtful way that keeps it brief, right? I mean, nobody wants to spend hours on Zoom. 15 to 30 minutes on Zoom is plenty for me, if you don't mind me saying so. So it's all about getting ready for that. And so that's the meeting component, but really you still have all these different ways to engage with site selectors. And if they're anything like me, and I bet they're more, they probably get more emails than I do. I can't keep up with the emails that come in my inbox. So the HTML emails, the newsletters that you're maybe mass sending out to all of the site selection community. I'm not saying stop that, but I bet you if you look at the analytics, and that'll tell you the real story, they're not being opened or they're not being engaged with as much as you want them to. So then, what do you try and do? Personally, and it goes back to Albert, let's take a step back. What is it that you want to tell them? If you just want to tell a site selector that you've got a great community and you're ready for business, the story's not refined enough. You don't have your ducks in a row just yet. Now, if you're Garner, North Carolina, 3 years ago, and you've got the former Conagra property, 97 acres on Interstate 40 at exit 306, available for potentially $1, that's a story, right? So now how do we use that to engage with site selectors? And in that regard, there are a number of different things. Laugh at it if you like, but direct mail, if you get something really, really interesting in a really weird or unusual package, you're gonna open it. You might only spend 10 seconds with it, but you're gonna open it. FedEx packages, do something fun to engage with them, but make sure you've got the story to tell them. Don't just say, we're a great community with a great quality of life and great things happen here, so you should come.
I agree with you. Yeah, I love the FedEx and UPS, whatever you want, overnight. Actually, I think it's effective. It can be expensive, but quite frankly, in the site selector world, it's a large but targeted group, and you can utilize some strategies like that. I think you're right, and you preach what we preach, if you will, which is it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's all about having your story together. I want to get back to Sherry's question though, in sort of the last part of it where she says, or is it too late? No, I think that this goes beyond marketing, but I think we're clearly in an environment where the trend is going to be more inshoring. And I think we clearly live in a state that is probably going to benefit from that because of access to land, access to infrastructure, and the fact that we live in a state that is very well known for being favorable towards companies coming in and being very favorable towards economic development. So I think, we could be in other places that are not as favorable as we are now. Is it too late? Absolutely not. I also think I would be, from a strategic standpoint, and you sort of said it, but I'd be stepping back and making sure our internal folks, our political leaders, our other business leaders, your board really understands what is the effort you're going to actually put forth. Whether it's a campaign on LinkedIn, whether it's an overnight FedEx campaign, if you will. But again, it starts with having a story, having a plan, but then getting real buy-in. Making sure that your folks internally understand what it is you're trying to achieve and then actually help create that buy-in. Site selectors need to be taken exactly to the water, if you will. And you need to help them do that by highlighting access to land, access to infrastructure, access to workforce, and all those other aspects that actually are really important to their world within economic development and site selectors.
Great. I might ask one more question of you, and then at the end of that question, Emily, if you don't mind pulling up the summary of our thoughts. I think that would be a nice way to sort of end this portion of the presentation and see what other questions might be out there. But Kevin made an interesting comment or asked an interesting question, and let me know if you're, well, could you give a few different examples of campaigns and or targets using Facebook versus LinkedIn? And I think if I could put my own spin on it, it's how does a campaign or a targeting in Facebook look the same or maybe look slightly different than using LinkedIn?
Well, I mean, with Facebook, you're actually pushing through a lot of other noise that's just out there, and clearly LinkedIn is a noisy platform as well. I go back to who's viewing Facebook versus LinkedIn, because I think at the end of the day, that's the most important aspect, is who's my target audience and where are they sitting. The effort of the campaign can look the same on every platform. Obviously, Facebook has either Facebook Live features and other features that are a little bit different than LinkedIn. LinkedIn, quite frankly, has some better ways to segment out your audience, to be more surgical about how you're going in to touch them. But at the end of the day, this is why I sort of said earlier, I have preference over LinkedIn versus Facebook. I think the biggest difference is what audience is on which platform. And I would suspect that the audience that we all, from an economic development standpoint, are trying to get in front of and speak to is probably sitting on your LinkedIn platform versus your Facebook platform. And again, it doesn't really matter what your message is. Well, it does matter what your message is, but if you don't have the right audience in front of you, it doesn't matter what your message is. So to answer your question, I'd rather go to LinkedIn because of the fact that I can be more surgical about how I segment out my audience and be more targeted. And quite frankly, that is where my players are, if you will. The folks that are probably making decisions from a corporate standpoint, the site selectors that are probably making decisions on how to advise clients, or down to the managing partner in Jones Lang LaSalle, who's trying to provide real estate counsel to a Fortune 500 company as they're looking at a sort of a 30-state viewpoint of where they're going to put their next facility. You can make the campaigns look similar. You can have the similar message, but LinkedIn is where you're going to find, in my opinion, is where you're going to find your fish, of which we're trying to pull into the boat.
Yeah, and just to follow up and say one last thing on that. I mean, the simplest thing is with LinkedIn, the whole way that people are categorized is by job titles and job histories, right? So if I'm looking for directors of operations, LinkedIn knows exactly whose that is. Facebook might, but they probably know that they're more interested in going to the beach than how long they've been in management. So I think that's really the biggest difference there. So I know we are running fairly low on time. Albert, how about you and I just sort of run through these real quickly, and then leave a little bit of time for Q&A. Maybe if you don't mind, I'll take the first two, and then you take the third. Regarding your budget, it doesn't matter if you have $500, $5,000, $50,000, or whatever. You have to know what your budget is in order to build any kind of a plan. Even with, let's just say, $5,000, there are a lot of different things that you can do for $5,000. It pales in comparison to what you could do for 50, but if you've got $5,000, you don't need to be doing paid media. I can guarantee you that. You don't need to be trying to place a full page ad. You need to be posting on LinkedIn, using digital advertising. So knowing your budget helps you better define what you can actually execute in your marketing plan. And then be realistic about your resources, financial and human. Financial, that's back to know your budget. But human, it's okay. So let's say I'm either a one-person shop or a two-person shop. What can I do that won't cost me any money? It just costs me time. So that's the first question. But then the second question is, am I going to have the time to actually execute on the ideas? And if I have more time than money, that's going to help me make some decisions. And believe it or not, this is the case sometimes. If I have more money than time, then I'm going to know that I need to find a trusted partner to help me execute on the things in my plan. I'd love to get your thoughts on those, Albert, or feel free to dive into bullet number 3.
I'll just say one quick thing about know your budget. We have a lot of times, and I know you encountered this as well. A lot of times, an organization will come to us and say, "Tell us what you can do. Tell us what it's going to take." And next thing you know, we're developing plans that are need to have, nice to have, layers of plans with different layers of budget in there. Understand this, especially when you're dealing with outside organizations like Eklund Vaughn or like your organization at Liaison. Help them understand what your budget is from the beginning, because in our world we can actually provide better solutions to you if we understand what your budget is ahead of time, versus just giving us a full playing field to play on without any parameters around it. And I agree with everything you say about be realistic about your resources, financial and human. That you find a lot of organizations that overwhelm themselves because they're not being thoughtful about the effort that they're going to take. Another key takeaway, and I think we've harped on this a lot, is development of your communications plan. I would also say to that, if you don't have, if you have one, I would encourage you to pull it out. If you don't have one, I would actually encourage you to be looking in the mirror and asking, why don't I have a plan? Because I would say that's a scary moment to be sitting in an organization where you don't really have a plan, nor have you put goals and objectives to it. And inside that plan, and again, we find a lot of organizations that have problems with this. They're really not thinking about who is their audience. Obviously, we're talking about site selectors, but their audience has a lot of different key stakeholders and folks that they're going to target within that. And they need to make sure they're really thinking through how they're going to segment out those messages. And then obviously, we've talked about developing your story. It's really hard in this environment to not go out and tell a story, and then obviously develop the platforms and the creative assets to go do that. And I think, and just to sum this one up, because we've talked about timeline, tactics, and budget, metrics that will define success, being really thoughtful up front about how are you going to define success. We look at it a lot of different ways. Sometimes, for instance, on a digital campaign or other efforts, we're looking at reach and engagement as 2 metrics of success. And you've got to figure out how you're going to measure those. And then quite frankly, adjust accordingly. Understand that plans are just that. There are moving targets, and understand that we need to adjust these plans at the appropriate time. And again, if you're not utilizing and working your plan through the end, you have no ability to really adjust them because you're probably not working off of that plan. Next slide. Jeff, you want to take the first one?
Yeah, I'll take the first if you want to take the rest. And really, no need to harp on this. If you don't have an active Google Analytics account, or you're not logging in, even just on a monthly basis to see what's going on your website, get one and start doing it. It can feel overwhelming, but it gives you so much information. It's ridiculously intuitive. You can find everything about what kinds of content people are viewing on your website. And if you really want to have some fun and you want to drive people to specific parts of your website, make changes on your website so that the content you want people to see is highlighted in a different or more substantial way. Then monitor it. See if your changes work. Are people going where you want them to? Everything that we've talked about, whether it's, a lot of the digital advertising we've talked about, LinkedIn, social, and that's just touching the iceberg of digital advertising. You can monitor it all using their analytics platform, but the rubber meets the road where, are they really engaging on my website? And then it can go as deep as you want it to. But if you're even close to overwhelmed, just start with the basics. It will give you so much information that you may not currently have.
Then the last two, focus on recruitment and retention. What I'll highlight here is really focus on retention. I think all economic developers understand that their role is to recruit new capital and jobs within their community. I would really encourage the economic development community to really be focused also on retention, utilizing and engaging with those current businesses and business leaders that are within your community. Understand what are their challenges and objectives, and figure out how you and your organization can assist them. At the end of the day, companies that engage and invest in communities, they're doing it because they have confidence in the community, they have confidence in the workforce, and they have confidence in the fact that they're entering a stable political and economic environment. Because that's what a company wants, is stability as best as they can actually create it for themselves. And especially in today's environment, it's very hard. Lastly, think about partnering and pooling resources. We didn't talk about this a whole lot. We touched on it. Great time to be speaking to your colleagues in your neighboring communities, quite frankly. Great time to be thinking about regional approaches. I know this is not a new trend. I know that a lot of organizations do this in a very effective way. And I think actually as you are trying to actually elevate your community and or region in front of site selectors and other key audiences, trying to make yourself bigger by partnering with key communities, and then beginning to understand where does your community fit into those other communities from the assistance of bringing new capital and jobs in, is very important. I understand that everyone wants all of the capital in their own community and they don't want it in the adjacent community, because sometimes we're measured by that. However, understanding how communities work with one another, and then partnering and actually developing strategies in alignment is a good way to utilize your dollar further and, quite frankly, get on the radar of others. Again, a Fortune 500 company, they don't really, some of them don't know where Charlotte is nor where Raleigh is on the map, but they know that both of them are in North Carolina, and they don't really care where they are on the map. All they care about are the assets inside that community going to help us achieve our goals. And so from an economic development perspective, thinking larger and thinking more regional can help get on those appropriate radars. So with that, Liz will stop, and Kevin, pardon me, will stop. I know we've kind of almost hit our time limit, but we'll make ourselves available for anything you'd like.
Thanks, Albert and Jeff. Yeah, in lieu of the time, to respect everybody's 1 o'clock, I'm gonna just go ahead and go through the closing. If anybody has any last minute questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box. And after the closing statement, if you want to stick around, Albert and Jeff can maybe hit on them for you. But, guys, thank you so much. We appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us, NCEDA members. That concludes today's webinar. I'd like to again thank the long list of annual sponsors you saw earlier. Their support remains crucial as we bring our members to the latest information, guidance, and professional development during the pandemic. We continue to organize new webinar offerings on timely topics. This Thursday morning at 11 a.m., we'll join experts from Smith Anderson Law Firm in a discussion of COVID-19 civil immunity protections for businesses. North Carolina economic development professionals will benefit from that timely information. We also hope to see you at our virtual annual conference next Wednesday on August 26th. We'll have a full day of learning and network building. That's 1 week from tomorrow. Visit NCEDA website to learn more. And as you embrace the challenges and opportunities ahead, please know that NCEDA stands with you, and let's all stay connected, stay confident, and stay well. So again, thank you all.